listening to Mr. Allard's Neighborhood. Small town feel with big time ideas. After all, you are entitled to Brad's opinion. Here's your host, Brad Allard.
Yeah, you caught me checking on the Facebook to make sure I can get this all saved and whatever and shared and whatnot. How you doing, Josh?
Living the dream.
Living the dream. Well, I'm still got this crud, but I don't feel bad. But it just once you get this coughing, it's going to stay with you a couple of weeks. So.
Oh yeah, it doesn't really go away for a while.
No, it doesn't. I'm not sick. I just feel a little coughing. So if I hack and cough through this, try to work your way through it and pull out the brilliance that I'm about to present, so to speak. So anyway, you got big plans for Christmas?
Not really.
Yeah,
we got family in town. Yeah. Just staying here.
Yeah, we're gonna have the roast swan. We're a very elegant family. Not really. No, we're going to my mother's in Corsicana, and family will be there. The usual routine. The younger ones will kind of patiently wait their time until it's time to open presents. Okay, there you go. The rest of us will talk, and they'll start looking at their watch, like TikTok, buddy. I need my presents, and that kind of thing. And if we go to church services, it'll be at my mother's choice or not, because it's up to her how she's feeling. She's been kind of sickly too. Everybody's getting it.
It's just going around.
I was talking to several people. I finally went to church yesterday, first time in about 3 weeks, and they said that attendance has been cut by about a quarter because of it. So anyway, it's all well and good. Anyway, we're going to talk today. About Syria and Venezuela and the Epstein files, and then I'm going to address something that was thoroughly discussed on my Facebook page, and that was Mr. Trump's response to the death of Rob Reiner. And I'm going to kind of respond to that after I share this with all the various groups. There's a bunch here. I have about like 12 that I share this with, because I think everybody is entitled to my opinion, don't you?
Oh, yeah. It says on the screen.
It says right on the screen behind me. I'm looking. Oh, come on. There he goes. Some others. I just look on these things to try to, get everybody a piece of the action. All right. One more. I'm looking for one more. Well, didn't see it. It didn't matter. Anyway, let's go ahead and talk about the sponsors. Then we're going to have a couple of video clips from the news, and we'll just address those things. So thank you, Otto, at our place. I was there last week. I went to our place too last week, and it's very nice. I mean, it's like a miniature our place over in Burleson or in Cleveland or in Mansfield. It's about maybe 35% of the size, but it's the same food, same service, a lot of the same staff. A lot of people work for Otto as much as they work for one particular restaurant. You go to Gina's, you go to our place, you'll see a lot of the same wait staff or whatnot. So it's really kind of a hometown thing. Also, speaking of Gina's, it's a good time to go to Gina's, because you're going to be cooking a lot and whatever. And after a while, you're going to get tired of cooking. So go get yourself a pizza or two this week. It's always great deals. It's always wonderful. It's a good atmosphere. You want to get away from the family, go to Gina's, listen to the music, have a pizza, have a beer. It's a good time. And, because sometimes you just have enough of family. You ever get like that?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
No, my family's great.
Yeah, my family's great too, but, let's, great in small doses, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, I gotcha. Sorry. Also, thank you to my friend John Williams at Old Pro Roofing. This would be a good time to get the roof inspected, because the weather, this is December, right? December 22nd, and look at this weather. It's going to be in the 70s all week. Now, I wouldn't have him come check your roof on Christmas Day. All right, give the boy a break. But sometime in the next couple of weeks, where the weather's good, you need to have them check the roof, because it ain't going to be good forever. It's going to get winter sooner or later. Now, I did check the long-term forecast, and they said we're going to have a warmer and drier winter than normal, which we've had nothing but warm and dry winters, seems like the last few years. I don't know what normal is anymore. But anyway, call John at 817-734-2756, because before you know it's going to be March, it's going to be storm season. And you need to know the shape of your roof. And you need to be able to tell insurance companies, this is the shape of my roof as of today. Because if they think that this has been a long-term problem, they're going to give you a long-term problem. So have John come out and check out your roof. It didn't cost you anything. 817-734-2756. Also, my buddy Jeff Kelly at the Wethington Agency here in town, 817-781-0546, or Jeff at jeffkellyrealty.com. He'll help you buy and or sell here in the Johnson County area. He does a lot of Burleson business, obviously, but he does a lot of business also with Godley and Joshua. And now Cleburne, I understand, is starting to grow some. And so there you go. So give him a call again, 817-781-0546. And during this Christmas season, tune in to 88.3 The Journey for some Christmas music. Well, Christmas music, my wife's playing it 24/7. Those YouTube channels, they're just scenery, AI scenery, and that's what
it's like the 24/7 Christmas music streams.
Now it is, but a lot of times it's just a seasonal music, or have a seasonal picture, and it's just jazz or whatever. And now it's Christmas music, and I'm getting flogged with it. So, anyway, speaking of flogging, let's talk about the world events today. By the way, we won't have a show, obviously, the rest of this week, and we'll probably have one next Monday. And what I'm going to do next Monday is just talk about my projections for next year, which, I am not a good projector, to say the least. That's why I don't bet, because I could probably lose in a one-horse race. So I don't bet, but I'm just saying this is what I see happening. But anyway, let's talk about what's happening in Syria. If you're not really clear, we had a couple of men that were killed, a couple of servicemen killed by ISIS, and this was Mr. Trump's response.
And good evening. We are tracking two major breaking stories as we come on the air. We'll get to the new revelations in the Epstein files in a moment. They finally have been released by the Department of Justice, but we begin with major military action by the U.S. targeting ISIS in Syria. This is video of U.S. jets taking off as part of what's being described as a massive and ongoing strike campaign inside the Middle Eastern country. And the Secretary of Defense was blunt about their mission, writing, "This is not the beginning of a war. It is a declaration of vengeance." Vengeance for the killing last weekend of these two U.S. soldiers when ISIS ambushed them in Syria. The president had vowed to retaliate in the hours after that attack, and today promising that any terrorist that strikes America will be hit harder than they have ever been hit before. We have two reports tonight, beginning with our Pentagon reporter, Courtney Cuby. And Courtney, tell us what you're learning tonight about these strikes.
Yeah, Tom, today the U.S. military striking dozens of targets at multiple locations around Syria, targeting primarily ISIS infrastructure and weapon sites, according to a U.S. official. Called Operation Hawkeye Strike, the mission was in retaliation for an ambush attack near Palmyra, Syria last Saturday that killed two Iowa National Guard soldiers and a U.S. interpreter. U.S. A-10s, F-16s, Apache helicopters, and artillery, joined by Jordanian F-16s, conducted today's strikes. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth writing on social media that this is not the beginning of a war, it is a declaration of vengeance. But a U.S. official said the scope and duration of the U.S. response depends in part on how ISIS reacts to today's actions. Tom?
All right, Courtney, thank you. Let's bring in Gabe Gutierrez live at the White House. And Gabe, the president had said this attack was coming.
Yes, he did, Tom, and his administration is touting this as a promise kept. The president just posting on social media the U.S. is inflicting very serious retaliation, adding all terrorists who are evil enough to attack Americans are hereby warned you will be hit harder than you have ever been hit before if you in any way attack or threaten the USA. The president had attended the dignified transfer of the National Guardsmen on Wednesday. These retaliatory strikes comes just weeks after Trump hosted Syria's new president, Ahmed al-Sharaa, in the Oval Office. He's a former jihadist who once supported al-Qaeda, but now he's a U.S. ally. President Trump making it clear that he does not hold Syria's new government responsible for the ISIS attack on American troops. The stability of Syria seen as crucial to the administration's foreign policy in the Middle East. Tom?
All right, Gabe,
All right,
thanks to you.
All right, now, I had a couple of people ask me about this. Was this a legal act? Was this, something the president can do? And the answer is yes. All right. The president of the United States does have the authority, and always has, not just this particular one, but any president has the authority to respond in this type of manner without a declaration of war or anything like that. And parties, Congresses of both parties have, you may have a person here or there raising Cain about it, but that's just for idiots on the fringe that want to get on TV. This is really not as controversial as some try to make it out on social media, because the thing is, this was something that is within the authority of the United States to retaliate against attacks against our troops. Now, the second question is, why are our troops there? First of all, we're not invading or or occupying anything. We are there at the permission of the Syrian government now, which they mentioned in the clip. I can't remember the name of the president off the top of my head as easily as I used to, but he is a former Al Qaeda jihadist who broke with them because of their, even for him, that became too radical. And so he's now our ally, and we need Syria to be stable, obviously, not just for Israel's sake, but for the entire region, and also to be we want to be a ally with Syria to prevent Russia from continuing to occupy that area. The Russians have a naval base there, and they want to expand there, but this particular president's not allowing them there, and we have Americans there, and so Putin's plans in Syria have been thwarted, at least for now. But the bottom line is, this is not an unauthorized or illegal action. This is entirely within the powers of any president to respond to attacks to our military. And so I think that's not really in question. What is in question a lot is Venezuela. There's two aspects of this. One is the bombing of those drug boats. The other is the taking of the oil tankers. I want to address the drug boats first, because I've already done that once before. First of all, the President of the United States declared fentanyl to be a weapon of mass destruction and therefore a target. Well, he doesn't have the authority to do that, honestly. He does not have that kind of authority to declare just arbitrarily what is and is not a weapon of mass destruction. Second of all, if that really is the case, then we're wasting our time with Venezuela. Mexico sends 100% more, 10 times more fentanyl into our country. China sends more fentanyl to our country by far than Venezuela ever thought about. The primary drug coming out of Venezuela isn't fentanyl, it's cocaine. And so the point I'm making is that, well, if you're going to call a weapon of mass destruction, how do you address Mexico? Now, let's be very crystal clear about this. I am in no way advocating us taking actions against Mexico, military or otherwise. That'd be a disaster for so many different reasons. But I'm just saying that's not what I'm saying here. But I'm just saying there's more to what's going on in Venezuela than just drug running. Okay? And I think a lot of it has to do with who Venezuela supports or is supported by. They're supported by Russia, North Korea, China, Iran, Cuba, and it's a reciprocal arrangement. Those are probably some of our biggest opponents in this world. And that's why I think Venezuela, which is a close and easier target, is being singled out for this type of activity. But if the United States wants to pursue further this drug interdiction kind of policy of just blowing up the boats, I've said this before and I'll say it again, the President of the United States needs to make the case with not just Congress, but with the American people as to why this is necessary. For him to arbitrarily just be blowing up boats, it may be on some emotional level satisfying to his supporters and think, yeah, they have it coming. They're bringing drugs into our country. I have to always ask that question. Why are they bringing drugs into our country? Because there's a market for it. When we look at the market before we look at the supplier, okay? It's like they're inflicting this upon us. Well, there's a reason why they're risking life and limb to bring drugs into our country, because there's money involved. But that's a separate question. But the point is, if he went to Congress and said, this is why I'm doing this, I want your authorization, and after all the hair pulling and debates and whatever else, and he finally got it, I wouldn't have a leg to stand on. I could be against the policy maybe, but it would be an authorized action, and that's a different conversation. Now, as far as the Venezuela tankers being taken over by the Coast Guard, that's kind of a different question. First of all, the sanctions that are being applied to Venezuelan oil is not just American sanctions. The European Union has those sanctions. A lot of the NATO allies have those sanctions. Non-EU countries in Europe have supported those sanctions. South America does not buy Venezuelan oil, primarily because they can get it elsewhere. So we're not talking about the United States acting in a unilateral fashion here. This is something that has been agreed upon with all our allies. So it's a separate thing. Now, again, if you don't like the policy, we could debate that. But I think what people are trying to make it out is this is an illegal activity. Well, when we apply sanctions to countries, and they're universally upheld by our allies. I mean, China is not upholding it, of course, and neither is Russia. And on a side note, it really depends on where the oil is going as to which ones we're focusing on. If they're heading to China, which they don't need the oil, but anyway, if they're heading to China or Russia, we leave them alone. Why? Because that would cause a lot of problems. If they're heading to Iran or from Iran to Cuba or from Cuba, that's a different thing. And so what we're seeing in Venezuela, and it comes to the tankers, is not something that really needs to inspire the kind of debate, because that debate's already been had, and it's been agreed upon by most of the Western economies of the world. And so if you disagree with that, fine, but the process is something that has been laid out prior to the actions of the Coast Guard. This was not an arbitrary thing. They woke up one morning and boom, let's take over an oil tanker. This has been something that was known and has been on the plans and has not been enforced until Mr. Trump. Okay? Let's talk about the Epstein files. How about that? That's always a pleasant topic. Come on.
Just weeks
there you go.
after Trump hosted Syria's new president,
Oops.
Ahmed al-Shara government, responsible for the
We got a little bit of
attack on
carryover.
American troops.
No big deal.
The stability of Syria seems
It's coming
crucial
next.
to the administration's foreign policy in the Middle East.
Thank you, Gabe.
All right, Gabe, our thanks to you. Now to that other breaking news tonight, the release of hundreds of thousands of documents related to the late sex offender, Jeffrey Epstein. The Justice Department was ordered to release those never-before-seen documents and photos by tonight, and our teams have been pouring through them. Some of the images are alarming. Ryan Noble,
Alarming.
what's inside the files tonight?
Tonight, for the first time, the Epstein files made public. The Justice Department posting hundreds of thousands of items online related to the DOJ's criminal investigations of the late sex offender, including photos that do not include context or prove any criminal activity. Here, former President Bill Clinton appears in a hot tub with someone whose face is redacted. In another, Clinton is seen next to Epstein, and Michael Jackson seen here with Epstein. Another shows Epstein, co-conspirator Ghislaine Maxwell, Mick Jagger, and Bill Clinton seated at a table. And this photo of Epstein with Richard Branson. The Justice Department and the FBI this summer said they, quote, did not uncover evidence that would warrant an investigation against uncharged third parties. The documents contain numerous redactions, including to protect victims' identities.
What is not fine is for him to engage in additional redactions without any explanation. And that's the question that we have.
No administration had ever released the documents until Congress voted nearly unanimously to order the DOJ to make them public.
We also want to know why the government failed in so many years. These crimes went on for decades, through 5 different presidential administrations before Epstein was finally put in jail.
All of it comes as new details have been published of Epstein's rise from private school teacher to financial advisor for the wealthy, described as a chronic liar who still gained the trust of powerful people. The New York Times reporting he lied on his resume and abused expense accounts, citing interviews with people in Epstein's past. And tonight, a top Democrat demanding the DOJ explain what's in and not in the files that were released.
So far, I have to say that the release has been disappointing from the initial read of it. But, you know, I reserve judgment until we go through all of the release.
All right, Ryan Nobles joins us now live. Ryan, we've been reaching out to the people seen in these photos for their responses.
That's right. And former President Bill Clinton has not been accused of any wrongdoing related to Epstein. And tonight, a spokesperson said they can release as many grainy 20-plus-year-old photos as they want. But this isn't about Bill Clinton. Richard Branson and Mick Jagger have also not responded to us tonight. Tom?
Okay, Ryan, thank you.
Okay, Josh, as the voice of your generation, does this Epstein thing register with you at all?
When you say register,
Well, I mean, is it important to you?
yeah, it's important to me.
Okay.
I disagree with how it's going on, but
Yeah, I do too. But what got to me about the Epstein situation, first of all, on a general note, what kind of society did Epstein and these people operate in? You know, for all these photographs, to me, were all a bunch of celebrities and big wheels and a lot of big financial players in the Manhattan society. And they all had to know what kind of person Jeffrey Epstein was. They couldn't have been deluded. This idea of my stars, he seduced and used underage women. Please, he didn't know that was going on. Every time you went to one of these cheese and wine parties on Manhattan, and you see all these young girls there, some of which were underage, and no one asked any questions. Okay, the reason why they're redacting a lot of these photos out of the pictures is because they're minors. Okay, they're not like 12-year-olds, but they're like 17-year-old or something like that. And no one misunderstood what kind of person Jeffrey Epstein was, yet they all hung around because he threw great parties and he gave money to all their, quote, philanthropies. Bill Clinton hung around him because he gave millions of dollars to that Clinton Family Global Initiative or whatever he calls it, which basically was just a slush fund for Hillary Clinton to run president on. Or, Trump, they got pictures of Trump. He was hanging around there because he was giving lots of money to Trump's causes and investing in his buildings and whatever else. And he threw great parties. And it was always the scene, man. It was always a great place to go hang out. That's what got to me about this whole Epstein situation, is that the hypocrisy of it is like, oh, I had no idea. Bullcorn. And it's using a euphemism that some of my former students know what I mean. It is. It's bull. It's because they knew. Okay? Now, as far as all these other, pictures and all, I really don't think the Democrats or the Republicans going to look or find what they're looking for. What they want on both sides is hard, incriminating, photographs, documentation, whatever, evidence that either Trump or Clinton or any of these others were actually engaged in some sort of physical relationship with an underage girl. They're looking for something that's criminal or perverse. And right now what they're getting is a bunch of pictures of Clinton in a hot tub or Clinton hanging around or whatever else, or Trump in Epstein schmoozing at some party. And both sides are disappointed because they wanted to have this weapon to hand, and to hammer the other side with. And so that's why, to me, this Epstein thing has been somewhat of a bust. My personal view is if they had evidence of Trump really engaging in physical activity with these women or girls, the Biden administration would have released it 10 years ago, or Obama would have, or the Biden administration would have, definitely to hurt his electoral chances. But they didn't want to do that because they don't either A, they don't have it, or B, they didn't want Bill Clinton and some of their other supporters to get caught up in the wash. A lot of these celebrities, Woody Allen was shown in these pictures. Michael Jackson, you see the picture of Michael Jackson?
Yeah.
What did he look like to you? He looked like a ghost.
Yeah.
He looked terrible. And, and there's another fine guy to hang around with, Michael Jackson. All right. Also, I had, beside Richard Branson, they had Bill Gates, and they've had leaders of the major New York banks and other investment firms and things like that. Just about everybody in Manhattan that was a big wheel is going to be found in those photographs. And the Democrats are bellyaching about all the redactions made. Well, my point is they're not seeking justice. They're seeking vengeance, or they're seeking something to hammer politically with Trump. And so they're mad because they're not getting what they want. That the gentleman that was quoted, Ro Khanna, they didn't ever show his name, but Ro Khanna is the Democrat congressman that's been, doing the most barking about this. They're mad because they're not getting what they want. And Republicans are kind of mad too, because they wanted stuff about some of the major Democratic donors, and they're not getting it. And so my feeling is that neither side's going to be satisfied with the redactions or the pictures taken out or context or whatever else. And I think the majority of the American people really just don't focus that much on this, because they see this as some New York, Washington nexus kind of thing, where that's a kind of amoral society that they operate in. I think my daughter has a term for this. It's called gross. All right. You're nodding your head, right? Mm-hmm. Well, it is. It really is grotesque to see people so oblivious. I mean, it's very much like Versailles, France, or something, we got all these real problems, and all these people are hanging around this pedophile because he's got money and good parties. And, I'll withhold judgment as to their level of participation. Right now, there is no evidence. Let's be clear about that. There's no evidence that either Trump or Clinton or these other people are guilty of any kind of underage activity. And I think that's what the real bust is for both sides, because they were hoping they'd find some real dirt on the other side, which is a fine use of our time. And there you go.
And money.
And money, yeah. And it's, the Democrats made this out to be such a big deal. And now it's kind of blown up on them that there's not a lot here. Well, that's because they're not showing all the files, or they're taking out, they're incriminating stuff. Well, again, I'll bring up that point. Joe Biden had 4 years to do this, and they didn't. Why? If there really was crimes being committed by Trump or anybody else, why would they withhold that from the American people?
Excuse my tinfoil hat here for a second.
Okay, that'd be great. No, go ahead. Don't bring it.
If Joe Biden didn't release it, then what if Joe Biden's in there?
Well, there's no evidence.
What if there's people who support Joe Biden?
Well, there's supporters of Joe Biden in there, yes.
Yeah, I know that's a conspiracy theory
no,
more than anything, but
it's legitimate. I mean, a lot of the people shown in the pictures are major Democrat donors.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just highly doubt that there can be, I guess, an innocent party for someone who was hanging around Epstein. They had to know what was going on.
Exactly.
Right?
There's no innocent parties. I mean, if by the fact that, well, I didn't participate, but you took his money and you hung around him and you went to his parties, you aided in his exploitation of these girls.
Exactly.
All right. That's it. Just because you yourself did participate in a physical relationship with an underage girl, you hung around a man who did and was basically a pimp for others. And you supported that activity tacitly by just hanging around him and taking his money and eating his cheese and drinking his wine and having your photo made with them. These aren't just candid photos. A lot of these are posed. And so, so you, to me, you're guilty of maybe not a criminal act, but an immoral act.
Exactly.
All right. If you say, well, that's somebody else's, activities. Well, you're an enabler. If in any way you support or give credence to this person or, enhance his reputation or benefit from him financially or vice versa, what else? But you're everything but the participant. So that's how I feel about these people I saw in the pictures. And it transcends party. All right. Because a lot of the people that you see in these pictures, unless you're really into the news, you wouldn't recognize them. But a lot of them are financial leaders of New York or stock market leaders or celebrities or movie producers or whatever else. And so, this idea, I had no idea, like Bill Gates says, bullcorn. All right.
Yeah, don't buy it for a second.
Don't buy it. Everybody knew. All right. As far as the other tinfoil part that he was killed and not committed suicide, until I see evidence of his murder, I'll believe that he committed suicide. I don't have any evidence. I don't like to go down those rabbit holes of conspiracy theories because, too many people do that already. And first of all, and if I get up here and say, I think this is what happened, and then 6 months later, I find out I was completely wrong, I'm not going to go back and retract it. I'll just move on to the next thing, right? That's what happens in social media. You don't hear people go back and say, I was wrong. You don't hear these social media influencers go back and say, let me make a correction of something I said back in July. It didn't work that way. They just move on to the next topic. You see that on the cable news. I don't watch any of that talk shows, period, zero, none, on both sides. I don't watch the nighttime Fox shows. I don't watch any of the MSN Now shows. I despise The View. I'd rather eat ground glass and sit through a political lecture from an idiot like Whoopi Goldberg. But some people do, apparently, and they get the ratings, and I guess that's the market system, right? Sorry, I'm hacking a bunch, aren't I? I've been cut down to a couple packs a day. Start smoking the filtered ones, maybe. I don't know. Let's talk about something that I posted on Facebook. Do you see that by any chance, Josh? I know you don't hang out on Facebook very much.
I typically stay away from Facebook, but no, I did not see.
Why do you stay away? Because a lot of young people your age do. I mean, this is something that it's almost generational now. Got a reason why?
I'm not sure.
Because most of y'all get on TikTok or Instagram.
Instagram's typically my place to be.
Mm-hmm. I've mentioned this before. I've asked my students How many are on Facebook? And about a third of them raise their hand. How many are on Instagram or TikTok? All of them raise their hand. Usually both. You know, very few of my students are not on at least TikTok or Instagram. Almost always it's both. As far as other type of formats, there's so many different ones out there. You know, when Colin Gregory comes in and talks about these things, my head is spinning at all the various platforms and avenues. But that's it. Anyway, the basic line was this: I put a post that was a posting of an article from the National Review about the president's response to Rob Reiner's death. And now, when I make a point about the National Review, people ask me or criticize me, where do I get information? I get it from 4 basic subjects, and they cover the spectrum: the liberal New York Times, the left of center Washington Post, the right of center Wall Street Journal, and the conservative National Review. All right, so I do feel like I get it from a varied aspect. Which one of those has the most influence on me? I would say probably the Wall Street Journal. All right, I like them the most. But the articles in the National Review are also pretty good. Now you say, why don't you read some more liberal ones? I've tried. And I read The Atlantic, which is left of center, and read Politico, which is left of center. But the point I'm making is the National Review wrote an article that I posted saying there's something wrong with Donald Trump to have him put something like that out about Rob Reiner. And then when he was asked about it, he would double down and said, quote, he was bad for the country. Okay, how is Rob Reiner bad for the country? Because he had liberal political views and acted upon them? Good heavens. Who ever heard of such a thing in the United States of America, right? I didn't agree with a lot of his views, but I liked his movies. You ever seen any Rob Reiner movies?
Yeah, he was in Princess Bride.
Yeah, well, see, everybody loves that movie. I don't know what the big deal is about that movie, but
It's a good movie.
There is a movie that if I were king, I would make mandatory watching, and this is Spinal Tap. Have you ever seen that?
I think I have. Yeah.
You need to see it. You know, Spinal Tap is genius. All right. He also, When Harry Met Sally, great movie. So, you know, he made a lot of really good movies. And he was a decent man. A lot of the conservatives spoke against what Donald Trump said about Rob Reiner. Some of the conservative actors like James Woods said he's one of the nicest men you'll ever meet, and he was one of the most American men you'll ever meet. But the point I'm making is that why would the President of the United States take his time out of his day to trash this man? And to say, double down on it and say he was bad for the country, I couldn't stand him, blah, blah, blah. Rob Reiner was not bad for this country just because he had liberal views and put his money and his time into supporting them. That is his right as an American citizen. I don't have to support his views. I don't have to like his views. I don't like that. I don't have to like what he did. But to say he was bad for the country is ridiculous. And I put a post out there, and most people liked it or, you know, supported it. But I got some pretty hard comments, and that's fine. I mean, I asked for this. You know, I don't have to do a podcast or Facebook. I could just be like so many other people and keep their head down. So it really didn't bother me when I get negative stuff, even when they call me bad names. I was called a disappointment. I was called a traitor. I was called stupid. I was called a couple of bad names. Fine. I think it says more about them than it does about me, but that's fine. But the point is that the lack of compassion shocked me, and I'm kind of thinking I was over being shocked by things that come out of Donald Trump's mouth. But then he shows me I'm wrong. He reaches a new point. It's like, no, hold my beer. All right? And it just shocked me that it was like, what kind of soul must this man have for him to trash another human being just because he didn't like his politics? All right? And now, I'll be clear. There's some Democrats and a couple of Republicans, for that matter, that when they pass away, if God willing, and it's in his hands, not mine, but when they pass away, I probably won't say much at all, because it'd be hypocritical for me to eulogize this person. So I'm not going to say anything at all. I don't want to name names, but there's a handful of people in public life that when they finally pass from the scene at God's timing, I'm not going to really mention it much at all. And I'm surely not going to trash them in public. If I'm sitting around having a beer with my buddy over at Otto's Joints, over at Gina's, that's one thing. That's fine. That's your personal opinion. That's you and your buddies. Have at it. To put it out there in public, particularly as the President of the United States, that's totally different. Totally different. And I just have to wonder what motivates this man. When will he be satisfied? He's president of the United States. He's naming all these things after him. It's not the Kennedy Center anymore. It's the Trump Kennedy Center. But you see that, Josh?
I did, unfortunately.
Yeah, tomorrow night, the Kennedy Center Honors are going to be on television. And they're getting pressure, CBS is, to call it not the Kennedy Center Honors, but the Trump Kennedy Center Honors. But they're advertising it as the Kennedy Honors. All right, he's putting his name everywhere. You know, there's a bill that was passed. Part of that one big beautiful bill. Part of it is to create savings accounts for when children are born for college. Right? Good plan. I like it. I don't have a problem with it. But you know what the formal title is? They're called Trump accounts. That's not a nickname. It's not like Obamacare, which is a nickname. They're Trump accounts by official decree. So 18 years from now, when your child is born and then is going to college, he's going to have Donald Trump's name on it. You know, back in the first term, when we got our first COVID payment, it was suspended. Why? Because Trump wanted to bring back the money and send it in physical check form to most people with his name on it. He wanted to make sure they saw his name on the check. So people had to wait for their money until the government could print up the checks with his signature on it. You got your head down over there. He's like, wow, right?
No, I do remember that. It was
So we're going to wait a little bit longer to get the money because we want to make sure Donald Trump gets the credit. And I just got to wonder, when is this going to stop? You know, I mean, when is it going to be satisfied? But that's his problem, right? We're all just collateral damage in the wake. He wants to go after his enemies. We're the ones that are paying the price. All right? People say he was unfairly prosecuted. Well, I'll give him that business with the porn star was ridiculous. That was a made-up deal. All right, they made a felony out of it where a felony did not exist. All right? As far as the pursuit on his handling of documents, classified documents, people say, well, they found some in Biden's garage, and they found some in Mike Pence's attic or whatever. Fine, it shows how sloppy our government is. All right, I get it. Maybe, but surely some of the other things need to be looked into. January 6th needs to have an answer. Also, sorry, it isn't just that. This is what really bothers me the most about Donald Trump is that he has not just corrupted or changed the concept of conservatism, but the people who support it. Many of the things that Donald Trump does and has done in no way are traditional conservative or even Republican policies. What do you call a government that has a financial stake in your major industries? Trivial Pursuit quiz, Josh, what do you call it?
Let me guess.
Yeah.
Starts with S.
Yes.
Ends with socialism.
Socialism is exactly right. And yet we have a financial stake in U.S. Steel and NVIDIA and several other tech companies. What do you call a situation where the President of the United States profits personally from being the president with this crypto coin business? All right? That's his money, not the government's money. As far as him demolishing the East Wing to put a Trump ballroom on it, there is a way to do that the right way. But he was afraid, no, I'm not going to do that. I'll just blow it up. All right? He's not waiting. He just does things and no one stops him. That is not the characteristic of the United States government. Dadgummit. The point I'm making is that we have a system of checks and balances in the United States that he's totally abrogating with his, I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to demolish the East Wing. I'm just going to name things after me. I'm just going to do this. I'm not even going to bother. That's how third world countries operate. And what bothered me about the responses, some of them, my God, is that they're okay with it. Yet if Biden were doing these things, they'd be off the charts. All right? And then I get to what about the reaction of Charlie Kirk's death? Let me be real clear. The assassination of Charlie Kirk was a tragic, tragic thing. You don't have to like what he said, but this is not how we operate in the United States. All right? And they said, well, the Democrats were very rude when there was a moment of silence, and they trashed Charlie Kirk. That's on them, okay? if there were some Democrats like Jasmine Crockett and others who said terrible things about Charlie Kirk after he's died, or some nitwit actress said something terrible about Charlie Kirk after he was killed, that's on them. We don't have to be that way. We don't have to take on their terrible responses and make them our own. And that's what we're doing when we say, well, I now have a latitude to respond and like. Well, you're just being like they are. You know, this all business about rising above it, that's what you need to do. Who cares if Jasmine Crockett or somebody else said something mean about Charlie Kirk? That shows the lack of compassion and lack of soul in them. You don't have to be that way. And that's my Christmas message, really. I was referring to that, is you don't have to be that way just because the other side is. You don't need to say, well, now, because they said that, I got latitude to do this. And that's what some of the responses I got. You know, I understand, actually, why so many Americans are angry. Okay, I understand. You know, and somebody asked me, and this is an example, somebody asked me a while back, how come he didn't like Obama? Okay, and I don't. I thought he was arrogant. I thought he would talk down to me. But the bottom line is, the reason I didn't like Obama is he didn't like me, and he didn't like my people. Okay? Same thing with Joe Biden. The contempt he had for about 49% of this country was obvious. And so what's happened is a lot of people say, well, look, they heaped all this scorn on me, and now it's my turn. I'm going to heap it back. And then so, you know, you're just wallowing in the same pigsty as they are. You know, what's that old expression? When you get in a mud fight with a pig, only the pig enjoys the mud. All right? I would tell those people that responded to me and said, what about? And look at all these things Trump is doing. First of all, 2 questions. Is this really what you want as a conservative? Government ownership of businesses, an arbitrary tariff that was imposed because Trump woke up one day mad at Brazil or pissed off at some commercial Canada ran? Is that what you want? Is it conservative to basically just do what you want without any kind of consultation with Congress and risk the possibility of pushback? Is that what you want as a conservative? All right. Do you want the government dictating economic policy like the way they have? Is conservatives used to stand for a strong foreign policy? Do you want us to continue to retreat from Ukraine and other areas that are at risk, instead focus on Venezuela, who's much less of a risk to us than anything else? Is that what you want as a conservative? Is that what? And that's the second thing is, do you want to be supportive of a man that retaliates and thinks that turning the other cheek is weakness? And that's a quote. That's from his idiot son, Don Jr. said, turning the other cheek is a sign of weakness. You want a man that says at a funeral to tell a grieving widow like Erica Kirk, I appreciate what you're doing, but I hate enemies. I wish the worst for them. Is that the kind of man you want to support? All right? Now, I get it. You know, Obama was very condescending, and the media is very condescending, and Hollywood and, you know, the culture makes conservatives tries to make them feel bad about being conservatives. I get it. I've experienced it for a long, long time. But on the other hand, I'm not going to be like Jasmine Crockett. I'm not going to let them define me. I'm not going to let the other side, with all the sayings that they have and mean things that they've said, define me. I don't care to own the libs or troll the libs, because I don't want to be owned or controlled or trolled by them. And that's exactly what a lot of people in this country are doing. They're letting themselves be controlled by the other side. And this goes for both ways, okay? This goes both ways. I mean, there's some right-wing guys I think are egregious. I was not familiar with Nick Fuentes until recently. Do you know who I'm talking about, Josh?
Unfortunately, I do.
Yeah. Scumbag. All right.
Oh, yeah.
All right. I don't go to let him define me. And the other side shouldn't either. But then on the other side, this is a bit more obscure because she didn't have the audience, but Joy Reid of the MS Now, terrible attitude, hates people. I'm not going to let her define me. And I don't feel like when she trashes white America that I need to respond. Let her stew in her own juices. All right? People that are like this sooner or later have to live with themselves by themselves. And I'm not going to let that be the defining characteristic of my life, is that I'm going to feel like I am obligated and entitled to put on the armor of righteousness and combat all these evil things that the other side is saying. And that's my Christmas message. Don't let the other side define you. And I know people on the left that let the right define them, and they're unpleasant, and they're angry, and they're always upset by something. And, it's like, how do you do it? I can't maintain that level of umbrage and anger 24/7. And it's destructive, not just to the country, but to yourself personally. I want to finish up with this, since this is a Christmas message, as you could tell by the jolly feeling behind it. We've been through hard times before. That's why I advocate the knowledge of history. We've gone through worse times than this. I think social media exasperates it a little bit. But, I always say the Reconstruction era is the worst, because we had Americans killing Americans, and not in military combat, but in ambushes and murders and lynchings and things like that. And we've had Americans killing Americans in the early 20s. Some of the terrible lynchings that were going on in this country, racial violence. And we've gone through times in the 60s where it was just as bad as it is now. All right? If we let the fringes on both sides of the argument, on the left and the right, dominate the conversations, let them taint our relationships with family and friends, let them become the defining characteristic of our lives, they win. And you lose. Period. All right? If Nick Fuentes or Joy Reid become part of your thinking patterns, you lose. If you think that because, this guy supported liberal policies and with his time and his money like Rob Reiner did, and you think he's bad for the country, you lose. Because you don't understand what America's about. Rob Reiner may not have policies I cared for, but that's his right. You may not like what I just said. It's my right. You may think I'm fill in the blank. That's your right. But if you're going to let others define who you are, you lose. And it's as simple as that. And I would say, know what you think. And also remember, particularly those who claim to be Christians, is this in any way, the way Christ would have acted in public life? And that not just for this, what I've just talked about, but the Epstein thing, or whatever else. Is this in any way the way Christ would have acted? Trashing people and calling them names and whatever else. And again, I'm addressing left and right. Is this in any way what you would pick from the example of Christ as shown in the Gospels? All right? Don't call yourself Christian and hate Jews. Don't call yourself Christian and hate the other side. Both sides. All right? It's very much opposed by the Christian message. You don't have to like what other people say, but you don't have to respond to it, and you don't have to feel like, well, I need to get my 2 cents in and up the ante. That's not the way it was shown to us in the Gospels. And that's all I have to say about that. What do you think, Josh?
That's good.
You liked it, huh?
It's good. What's the saying? An eye for an eye leaves the whole world blind. Right?
Something like that.
Yeah.
And
if I can go back to an earlier question you had for me, I feel like that's a big reason why I stay off of Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
And I just really social media as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
If you post anything remotely political, all of a sudden you're public enemy number one.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen relationships between my own family members deteriorate because of one link that got shared on Facebook. And so I kind of distanced myself from that, from social media. Or if I do post on like Facebook or Instagram, it's a fun photo with a silly caption and a life update, and then I just leave it.
Yeah. I would say the Facebook traffic has gone down noticeably in the last 3 or 4 years.
Oh, yeah.
And because they're just tired of being assaulted. You know, and I have people on both sides of the aisle, so to speak, that are friends with, and then some of them post some stuff, supportive of policies I'm not supportive of. But, okay, how is that changing my life? I don't feel compelled to say, no, you're wrong. And people say, well, and here's another thing, okay? And we were talking about this earlier. Politicians speak to our fears, even though they like to speak to our hopes, they think, but they speak to our fears. And so when you have these situations where, they do certain things over here to distract what they're doing over there, that's an old political trick, and we fall for it all the time. And another thing that drives me crazy is, I'd say, I'm not very supportive of Donald Trump. Oh, well, then you must be in support of, and they fill in all this stuff. I must be supportive, and not necessarily. Donald Trump, well, may stumble on a policy that I support, like a blind hog gets an acorn, all right, as they say. All right, I'm not going to be one of these guys that say, well, I don't care if it's a good policy or not. Donald Trump did it, therefore I hate it, or therefore I love it. I'm going to evaluate it on the policy itself. There's certain things that I don't want to see happen in, like, our schools. All right? But they do this all the time, and the Republicans are pretty bad at it in this state. They'll say, well, if you vote for their side, you're going to have abortion anytime, any place, anywhere, for any reason. And so, and you feel like, as a pro-lifer like myself, you think, well, yeah, if I vote Democrat, will I be abetting that position? And then they do all this other crap on the other side, and I have to support that because of the one thing that they want me to focus on. All right? Donald Trump has some policies that I may not have that big a problem with. I have a big problem with Donald Trump. But the point is that that's what politicians do, is they distract you by talking to something that really animates you and gets you really stirred up and gets you to support them. And then they do all this other stuff on the side that really isn't good for you or the country. Okay? And the Democrats do the same thing. They, there's like, if you vote for us, the world's going to burn up in 5 years. Climate hysteria, whatever you want to call it. Or they're going to be chasing, gays down in the middle of the street. And then the Republicans say, well, if you don't vote for me, then you're going to have unisex locker rooms. And it's like that they're talking to your fears and not to your needs and hopes. And that's an old political thing. They've done that for generations. So, and it's very difficult these days, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it really is.
Incredibly difficult.
And there's no nuance to anything. I like the fact that the border is more or less closed down. Now, we couldn't have the kind of willy-nilly, everybody rushing the border like we had under Biden. But I'm not really that crazy about them going into restaurants and taking out the cook staff. All right? Because I guarantee the first people going to bellyache about their roof being more expensive or the yard being more expensive are going to be people that advocate a complete and total clean out of everybody that here that's undocumented. All right? I get the worst of the worst. I get to get rid of the criminals. I get rid of the people that violate the law. I got it. But is really America being served by going through a Chili's restaurant and taking out 2 or 3 of the cooks?
Yeah. Sending home a Purple Heart veteran?
Yeah.
Did you see that?
I saw that, yeah. Or guys that have been here 30 years. Mm-hmm. Are we really being served by that? And so, I don't know. That's a whole nother issue. I had to talk about immigration next January.
Yeah, that'll be for the next show.
Well, no, I'm not going to talk about it so much. Next Monday, I'm going to talk about what I expect in 2026. So if you want to add to that, that'd be great. Everybody out there in my vast listening audience. Hopefully I'll have my voice better. So anyway, I know this was not a jolly Yuletide message, but I'm okay with it. I feel better.
It needed to be said.
And I have some people that criticize me over the years about this using this platform for this kind of thing, I'd say, hey, nothing's stopping you, bro. Go get you some sponsors. Go get you a studio, which I can recommend Airwave, even though I just got to have a big picture of Josh sitting over there with a Nick Fuentes type podcast going on over here. How would you feel about that?
I think contractually I should plead the fifth on this.
There you go.
As per my contract.
Well, there's other platforms you could use, but I like this one. But I just, it's like, hey, if you want to rebut and call me, all these things on your own podcast, get after it. Go get you some sponsors. Go get you a studio, and off you go. That's called America. All right, I'm exhausted. It takes a lot of energy when you're already kind of sickly, and then you have to rant.
Oh yeah,
yeah. All right, you guys, have a good Christmas, and try to. I know that everybody has family members that like, oh, geez, I hope my uncle doesn't bring up Trump again, or whatever. Just deal with it. They're family, and nothing should be getting in the way of that. Certainly not anything as ridiculous as politics. And we will see you next Monday. We'll talk about what's going on in the new year then. Goodbye.